Today in the bunker, I'm going to show you how I make corrugated iron. One of the hallmarks of post-apocalyptic terrain is corrugated iron or wriggly tin, depending on which side of the pond you're on. I use a lot of it, a couple of different kinds. There's the kind you can buy, and this comes in various colors. I use the black as a speed thing just because it speeds up in case I miss a spot priming it or whatever. It's a good product. The downside is that if you can't source it locally, then you have to order it online, and it costs money. It's not very expensive. It is very neat looking. It's very useful. The sheets are large, it's like 8 by 10. But that costs money. So if you're like me and you're on a budget, and read that as broke, I like to make wriggly tin. And there's a couple of different ways you can do that. They're both basically the same, but they involve a couple of different tools. The first one being this little fella, who is actually intended for squeezing paint tubes. Now, I've had two of these. This is the second one. I lost the first one. The first one was far superior to this one. This one, and both of them I bought at the same place, but I bought them years and years apart. So if you can, take a piece of whatever stock you're going to use with you, and hopefully these won't be bagged up, and you can try it in the store to see if it will work for what you want. This was darn near $20, and I was a bit sad that it really doesn't work as well as the last one. Here's a couple of pieces that I did just to give you a comparison. Here's one of them, and this is some backing chipboard from a car that I bought at the dollar store. But the corrugations are very, very shallow. Now, this will work to your advantage if you're trying to make something like a shipping container, where you don't necessarily want really, really deep corrugations because you're going to have other detailing on top of it, so that makes it easier to glue over. So not necessarily a bad thing. But if you're doing buildings and you want that, or walls in this case, you want that deep corrugated look so from a distance you can really see it, then I have switched to this fellow, which is the Marvi by Uchida. I bought this particular one off the Amazons. They used to have this sort of thing locally. I couldn't find one. This was cheaper than this guy and works a lot better if you use, some cat hair in there, if you use smaller pieces. Now for both of these, I tend to cut the pieces about the same. This is about a 3-inch roller. I go about 2.5, 2 3/4, just so it fits nicely, and it helps to keep it square. It'll still get off a little bit. You just kind of have to live with that. But this one, you can put a whole sheet of paper in. But if you do that, I've noticed it does really, really shallow corrugations. Whereas if you cut the smaller pieces like you would for the tube squeezer anyway, and put them in here, then it will do a much deeper corrugation. And it's a little tricky getting it to bite at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's not so bad. And you just crank that out, and you're off to the races. My original ones that I did, I put sanding sealer on this cardboard, and this is all from drink containers, drink boxes. It's cheap. You're going to throw it away anyway or recycle it, so you might as well cut it up and make it into corrugation if you're going to build a whole big town like I'm doing. And its advantage is that it's really cheap. You can use things like index cards. I would suggest putting the sandable sealer on that because that is so thin and a little bit more susceptible to moisture. Though if you paint it well enough, it probably would be fine. It's just a personal preference thing. I tend to over-engineer stuff. The drink cartons are a pretty good compromise if you're not going to put the sandable sealer on them. They're flexible enough. They take a good corrugation, but they also have a finish that makes them a little bit more impervious to humidity and whatnot. And where I live, that's kind of a big factor. But again, if you glue it down well and put some paint on it, that probably takes care of the problem. One thing I have noted is that you can put the sandable sealer on before you corrugate it, and it doesn't seem to bother the corrugating machines at all. So that's nice. You can do a big batch of this ahead of time and then corrugate it and make a huge stack. And that's generally what I do. And I had a big stack ready to show you, but I'm not sure what I did with it. So anyway, take my word for it, you can make a big stack. It speeds projects along greatly if you have a bunch of pre-done pieces that you can cut to size or whatever and add to your buildings. And I tend to use, as you saw if you watched the last series I did, which was overly long and really verbose, I tend to use both of these interchangeably. Here's a building that I'm working on, a two-story, kind of a fancy, sort of a village elder type, or maybe a merchant, somebody who's a little more successful. But you can see I've used both different kinds of corrugation, and when you mix and match like that, it gives it sort of an extra scrappy appearance. So either one works fine, both together work fine. It's all just personal preference. The corrugated iron, Wrigley tin, also works great for walls and fences, and I'll be doing a video about how to make those. But these are indispensable for post-apocalyptic fallout type terrain, especially if you're building a fortified town. You can have some fairly serious looking walls. Sort of mean business if you put up something like that that's not just entirely scrap. So either way, you can buy the pre-made stuff, you can make your own, you can do both, but either of these things, both of them should help you make some really fantastic terrain. Thanks for watching.